Welcome to Essays and IPAs, presented by CDI Studios.
All right, welcome to another episode of Essays and IPAs. I'm joined by Rob Owen once again, and this time with Joe Masi. I once again am Michael Colonno, AVP of the Data Center Solutions team. Joe, do you want to give a quick introduction of your position?
Sure, and thanks for having me today.
Of course.
Joe Masi, I'm the Global Accounts Team Lead here at CDI. Been with the company a couple months. It'll be my 10-year anniversary.
Very nice, very nice. So, something I apparently am asking everybody is really how you became a solutions architect. You know, my example was that everybody has a booze that they don't drink anymore, and there's always a story. It's the same thing with flipping from an engineer or sales to technical sales. Of course, I have to ask you, what is your booze?
What's my booze? Mostly IPAs, right?
No, I mean that you won't
Oh, that anymore. I won't drink anymore? Long Island iced teas, so about 7 boozes, right?
Okay.
I think there are about
very
7
nice.
different ingredients.
Get deep into the dangers of
those
quickly.
Those sneak up on you very fast.
Yeah,
that used to be my drink.
Yes, same.
So, but for being an SA, what is your kind of story? Like, do you have a story?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I became an SA not by choice but by chance.
Okay.
I was on the customer side for the good amount of my career, and then once the organization that I was working for, unfortunately, needed a bailout from the government, I was forced to seek opportunities elsewhere.
Sure.
So I saw all these solutions architects that I interacted with on a daily, weekly basis, and they looked like they were having fun. And I thought to myself, I can do that. And luckily, the rest is history. I got a big break as being a solution architect for another company, and was able to join CDI shortly after. So
yeah, that's
the rest is, as I say, history.
That's awesome. Yeah,
it's pretty funny because Joe and I actually share some common history in our path, right? We didn't exactly overlap, but we worked at a bunch of the same places. Like I think you right after me, kind of thing.
Yeah, we might have been crossing trains on the.
But it's funny because we've known a lot of the same people, which is kind of indicative of how small the industry really is.
Absolutely,
right? As it relates to IT, and then you whittle it down to technical selling motion. Yeah. It's really a small world.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously one of those attributes. We've talked about previously how we're almost an oxymoron ourselves in terms of being a salesperson, being technical. In that kind of startup, what was really like where did you start technologically? Like, what did you gravitate towards? Were you a storage person? Were you like that type of thing?
Yeah, when I was on the client side, I think I wore a lot of hats, right, as did most individuals. But where I really gravitated towards was mostly the storage and virtualization stacks.
Okay.
Compute was kind of par for the course, but where I made my niche was on the storage.
Were you ever a lab person? Were you ever have like some weird home lab or anything?
No, never.
I wasn't,
never,
so
no,
nobody.
Never.
I'm not trying to judge you.
My house isn't that large, and
you don't like your power bill.
I don't have that much that large of a service.
It is crazy because like over the years we've met so many people that do. I mean,
yeah, totally.
I know there's one guy at CDI who's in the office of the CTO who literally has dark fiber run on his property so that he has multi-site level testing that he can do on site. I never personally did that.
Well, I mean, you have to think of unfortunately he's not here anymore, but one of our senior engineers that was here for a long time, he was very well known for he had a rack in his dining room.
Yeah.
So and he kept on trying when customers would decom Cisco B chassis, he'd be like, "Oh, can I have that?" We're like, "Listen, you literally cannot get the type of power in your house to run this. Like, what are you trying to do here?"
It's also a great way to become very unpopular with your significant other who's not interested in
the only racks of the Masi household are wine racks. So
yeah, you never have to heat your house ever again. It's like that and like running like a mining rig, and you're pretty much good for heat.
True.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, like storage is obviously a.
I think we all share that in common to some degree, right, Mike? You did.
Yeah, I mean, I because I worked in a NOC, I unfortunately, but fortunately touched everything. I always gravitated towards VMware and storage.
Right.
Just because that always just even conceptually made more sense to me.
Sure.
VMware's funny because it's almost like a coming of age story for guys in our age range, right? Because we really grew up through the early days of it when it was everyone was terrified of it, and then for those of us that recognized how powerful of a tool it was going to be, I think we just we latched onto it because it was like, well, this is going to be the future.
I think I wrote it in the last what you missed. I always do a what you missed at the different conferences and everything. And we just had Explore last August, and I think legitimately, it's one of the most impactful technologies I think of in terms of more of a generalist type of field. Right? You have the biggest consolidation of resources minus. Flash storage, I guess, is another one in terms of bigger consolidations, right? But that augmentation of that virtual layer has been.
It also has it drastically changed IT in ways that I don't think anyone would have seen. As we kind of were young lads in the industry, things were really complicated, right? You needed to specialize, right? So your initial question kind of leads into this, which is, okay, when we first got into IT in the early 2000s, right, late 90s, early 2000s, you would have to pick a specialization, right? You couldn't be a total generalist, right? Yeah. And then with the kind of push into virtualization and then virtualization of compute first and then storage and then networking and down the road we've gone, what's happened is we've actually pushed people towards more generalization, right? So I have this, talk track. You guys have heard me talk about it a million times around, the people problem IT, right? So as the world evolves, generally speaking, you go through cycles of complexity to more simplicity and then back to complexity as new technology emerges, right? Because it takes a while for people to figure it all out. And VMware specifically, and I think then following on with companies like Pure in the storage world, really kind of like brought down the level of like PhD you needed to be an expert in those spaces.
Everything's being done from
configuring spindles in a VMAX kind of thing.
Think about the early days of VMware. When we were talking about VMware, the early days of VMware, you if you didn't know the command line in VMware, you were useless. Yeah. Now you can't even get it a command line without calling support. Yep. So you've taken the generalist and really kind of despecialize them, which is, I think, leads into, as we're following this path, the reason why SAs are so important in the marketplace, right? Because we see so many different things and we can still specialize to some degree because of the width, especially in our organization.
Get down to the macro level.
I mean,
everybody, I think being a generalist is like the baseline, but then everybody kind of picks a bit of a path along the way to say, okay, well, I'm more interested in this subject matter or not. And we see it across our whole team, right? We have some people that are highly specialized in one thing. And a lot of it comes down to what do you want to do, which is a beauty of it.
Well, now we're at that critical mass, right? We're at, like, for a long time, CDI, as a lot of different companies, you had to have every certification in the world to have partnerships. You had to have like all these different specifications and be able to know everything. Now I know, like us, I'm very glad, that we're able to diversify a lot more. I can literally say to Joe, like, what are you passionate about?
Sure.
And what would you like to know? Because I don't need you to learn these things that I used to have to force you to, hey, did you take this test? Did you read this book? Did you watch this video? Like,
yeah, it's funny. Back in the day, I was the hugest, like, cert aholic. You name a cert, and if I didn't have it, I wanted to get it.
Oh yeah,
that's slowly stopped as I've gotten older. But
so certifications, like that's definitely something that's like I've been talking.
Do a whole podcast on.
I've been talking about, and honestly,
Checkpoint.
Like but conferences. We mentioned. I said that I've done. I always do a what you missed at whatever conference. I know that you attended a lot of conferences. I'm not going to ask you to share any funny stories. You can. PG stories are fine.
Those might be on the outtakes.
That's gonna be on the blooper reel.
Should we talk about the night at Omnia?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I mean, we can share a funny story. It's just got to be clean, right? But what I'll say to you is, you've been in this industry a while, right? Rob has also. What do you feel at this point? What was the value of conferences when you started in the industry, and what is the value now?
Good question. I think one of the best things that has happened to me with conferences is my network. I've made more friends, reunited with old friends, and see who's kind of moved around different companies and organizations and partners. at the conferences, it also to add to my certaholic-ism, you could take like as many certs
exactly,
as
the
you
discounted
need.
certs, or free.
Bang out a couple certs in a day, and then have a nice IPA to celebrate your victory. But I think the best thing about conferences for me was my networking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's changed a lot, right? I used to go to those conferences, really seeking out knowledge. Okay, I'm going to go try to find those nuggets
every session.
Yeah, when we come back and
I was making friends while you were,
and we still do seeking knowledge. But Masi was at the bar and I was at the session, but that's probably not true. I used to go and really get into the sessions, right? The general session, really, really, really important to get the overall theme of what are they trying to get across as messaging, and then keep double clicking down to go find the people that can tell you the nuggets that we would then turn into the, hey, what did you miss at this conference? Yeah. I think we still do that. And I think a lot of the essays do that. For me, it's, I now have to, as an executive member of CDI, I have to go out and seek out that next kind of layer up and try to get into some of these smaller group meetings in those and really kind of get their idea of where their company is going, find out how that aligns with what we're doing, and making sure that they understand that alignment as well as we do, right? So when I go to conference, that's kind of what I'm searching for. But I think you nailed it. Networking is the number one reason I think that you go, and the rest of it's kind of ancillary to that.
And it's amazing if you are just, and this is once again, it's a very hard thing. I always feel bad for presenters at all these conferences because they ask for questions after they present, and you have once again a bunch of introverts in a big crowd, and you're saying like, "Hey, everybody, come up to this microphone right there in front of everybody. Ask me a question." And like, unless you pissed somebody off, during that session because you said some feature they love is gone, they're probably not getting up there. It has to be something they're passionate about, right?
Yeah. Microphone full of feedback, right?
Yeah, and I agree. When I started, I was doing the same thing. Like a free test is a free test, whether I pass or fail. I used to study on the plane out to wherever, and then like try to pass some test the first day. And now I've progressed through CDI through my career, and I'm very fortunate to be on a lot of advisory boards. So honestly, a lot of my time is barely in regular sessions. It's doing that. But you always look for those little, once again, we keep talking about finding those nuggets. Still, one of the coolest sessions was like VMworld in like 2015. It was this specific one about how the interaction of the hypervisor works with the CPU itself. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I went to the room. Supposed to be here today.
I think I slept through that one.
I might have missed that one.
But it was fantastic. It was fantastic. I actually was not at CDI, but CDI was there in quantity. It was funny. I saw like all my previous coworkers, which was cool.
It's going to be interesting to see how it evolves over time and
everything get back to normal.
Yeah, well, I mean, what is normal, right? Everybody's remote now. Are people going to want to attend the conferences more or less? I don't know.
Well, so hold on. So do you think there is value in the virtual conference? I know, as hold on. So as CDI, obviously we did 2 tech summits, virtual, which I think were pretty darn successful for never having done that type of thing before, right? We were not, we didn't have this type of production that we have right here. We were kind of maturing in that space, but virtualness, what do you think?
For me, it's tough, right? To dedicate an entire day to sit in front and sit through virtual sessions, I think is and it's just my personal answer. It's tough for me to focus for that long.
I agree.
I think where there is a lot of value to it, and I think it is on the recording side to say, okay, well, I really wanted to see that thing. But you get that at the physical conferences too. So to me, the right answer is I think they're going to have to do physical in-person conferences, and they got to be in locations people are interested in, right?
And that can hold volume of people.
The socialization. I mean, so
networking.
So one of my biggest pet peeves, and I'm going to ask you directly, is how many salespeople respect a calendar block for a virtual session, knowing that it's recorded. Do you think one of your salespeople would not be like, oh, I have an important customer call that has to happen during this time, and you're going to say no to that?
It's a loaded question, and I feel that some of those sales individuals may or not be watching this podcast, so I'm going to say they do respect my calendar.
Oh, very nice. Okay. Well, please send gift cards to Joe for his particular answer. There's at least 3 of you that should be sending it to. But you get what I'm saying, right?
I totally do it.
Is when it's an on-demand type of ability, which is great for, like you said, I can't, even if I was physical, I can't attend all the sessions I want because I literally don't want to run from session to session like I'm in between periods in high school.
Sure.
So what does that look like? So now it's hard to respect that.
Yeah. And you do have the luxury of, pausing the recording or but it's almost, like a DVR, replaying it when.
And in person, you're immersed in your culture of whatever that technology is.
You're almost unplugged when you're physically at the conference. And I think people tend to respect that more on the calendar, right?
Yeah. The biggest challenge, I think, for us as people on the East Coast is when we fly out to Vegas.
Lose a couple hours. Oh, you're hurt.
And there's an 8 a.m. East Coast conference call that they're like, hey, get on.
We've all been there, right? Taking that from the breakfast buffet.
Yeah, it's a little rough, especially had refreshments the evening before.
Yeah,
well, so conference story or conference event, like Rob, is there a particular any of the conferences? Don't think just like, is there a particular restaurant or a meal or a happening, like anything, that like, it doesn't have to be a full story, but something that happened that you're just like, oh, that was awesome that I got to do that.
It's been 20 years of doing it. There's so many of them. I've definitely seen some very cool, small venue, private concerts. I think one that stands out to me is I got to see Run DMC.
That was spectacular.
It's a weird situation when it's a room full of IT nerds. Run DMC, but kind of zoning out and focusing. I'm a music guy, so for me to see them live and in person, and I live where I live. Rev Run lives like right around the corner from me, so I see him driving around in his Rolls Royce all the time. That was a really cool experience. That was a really cool experience to see.
I've met him a few times, Rev Ron. I used to see all the time where I live. Missy Elliott lives down so I used to see her at Blockbuster all the time back in the day. I used to see Missy Elliott, Rev Run, and I used to see Ja Rule all the time. My friend actually drove Ja Rule's, I can't think of what they're called, like the 3-wheeled motorcycles.
Okay.
Slingshot?
Yeah, like slingshots. Yeah. How about you?
I'll tell you, I think one of the coolest events I've personally been a part of at a conference was a private Lenny Kravitz concert. He is just spectacular in person. But another customer-focused event is we took a very small group of customers in Las Vegas to the Paris restaurant, the one that looks like the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, yeah.
And we actually got a seat that overlooked the strip, and the clients just had a really, really good time.
That's really cool.
It was good to break bread and meet new individuals, and also get them out of the office. Right? You don't really they don't I think see a different
the other
aspect
part of Vegas that's often overlooked at the conferences because you end up in the bigger hotels is going down to the old strip.
I knew that's what you were going to say. Yeah, I had a great time when we went the one day.
It's a
great way to break things up and
100%
do some networking.
It was the first year that they had the hockey team, so we got to watch the hockey team. We didn't get to get in, but we got to watch it on like that big screen down there. That was a great time.
They have those you can zip line across the things.
Yeah, not my style.
I want to see.
I'll watch them.
I'll watch a few of these IPAs.
Yeah, it's great people watching down there for sure. So what I'll do is I'm gonna pause real quick. Opinions about this beer. I personally like it.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Jersey Girl. I think it's a great IPA.
So nice Jersey Girl, Sunkist, Citra, very light, very nice.
Thanks for having me on the podcast.
5.5%. The advice I always give everybody on IPAs is if it has Citra hops in it, you're probably going to like it because it's very fruit forward and tropical tasting, and it masks a lot of the bitterness of that IPA. Some IPAs can be bitter, and this is a New England style, and the Citra hops really kind of bring out that tropical flavor.
I like it because you can drink it right here. Certain IPAs, like double IPAs and things, like you would need like a greasy burger to go with it to really like stand it.
You said that last time, too.
I know. And
I think we're going to...
I want a greasy burger. Does anybody have a greasy burger?
For double IPAs next time.
Yes.
Essays and White Castles.
I'm going to do tacos and Mexican lagers.
Tacos and tech?
Yeah. little Pacifico, or maybe
I like it.
Modelo.
Tacos and Tanzania.
Yeah.
Tacos and Tanzania. Very nice. So that'll be the next sponsorship.
So what's the rating? What do you give it? You got to give it a rating.
What am I, Barstool?
You guys use the Untapped app? I use that Untapped app.
Well, we give it on Untapped. We go 1 out of 5.
I'd give it a solid 4.
Solid 4.
Yeah, it's very drinkable. That's so I'd give it a 4.
Yeah,
I'm going 3.75.
3.75. Okay.
Cool.
Your bar is a lot higher.
Yeah. I mean, the bar is very, very high. I'm surprised that you're a connoisseur of IPAs.
Yes, but it's great.
4?
Yeah, I give it a 4. All right, it's good. Drinkable, crushable.
It's drinkable.
Love the Citra, right?
Can't go wrong with Mosaic or Citra hops.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so
Cryo, I'm all in.
Yeah, cryo style.
Very nice. So another question I like to ask people is kind of like where you get your information from. Is it blogs? Is it other webcast sort of podcast type things? Is it conferences? Is like where do you get your different? It doesn't have to just be tech. It can be just where do you kind of ingest information from?
That's another great question. I guess if you asked me that a couple of years ago, it would mostly be from like the internet, right? Blogs, YouTube channels, white papers, etc. With the acquisitions and the new individuals that we have at our company, we are spoiled, right? Because you can literally pick up the phone or type in a team chat. Hey,
it's true. I'm
trying to find some information on this.
Yeah, it's like internal Google,
and you get the best of the best giving you their best information.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
What I try to do is almost like catalog it, right? So some of the new technologies like high performance computing and GPUs, Weka, etc. There's individuals that just have such a great wealth of knowledge that I don't take it for granted. And I make sure that I ping my peers, right?
Yeah.
And it's a great resource to have at our disposal.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's definitely one of those things. And I guess it's tough also because you are being in the position you are, working with globals, being a more senior person, you a lot of times, just like me, just like Rob, I think a lot of times we are spoiled now with the team where we have a group of specialists.
Yes.
So most of the time, we're looking at more strategic, more journey of technology, we're just flapping our gums, kind of thing, as opposed to in the weeds as much,
Sure.
So yeah, it's true. I mean, I still like to browse a lot of blogs. It's one of those things where a lot of people, what's funny is, when I used to interview people for technical positions, I used to take people down a question path. And the goal of the question was that they were going to Google it. That's what I wanted you to say, is that you were going to search it somewhere online.
Right.
That was the goal, was that how long, and I wanted to see how long they were going to, how long is enough for you to try to problem solve yourself before you just Googled it? Right. Because none of your problems are unique.
Sure.
Yes.
I would say anywhere but Reddit. Anywhere but Reddit. That's right.
Anywhere but Reddit. Yeah. So Reddit sucks.
Reddit sucks.
Well, that's tough. I mean, because at the same time, though Reddit is not the best source of information, that obviously is almost what like open source type stuff is like, sure. Right? Because it's kind of forum based. And I mean, I know CDI and a lot of other companies are more pro open source, right? Mm-hmm. We definitely have a couple relationships. You have Ansible. We see more and more people using AWX.
Absolutely.
It's interesting to see enterprise companies using open source things. Yeah. So, I mean, Joe, I would say, as we kind of enter 2023, do you have any kind of aspirations for goals like what you're hoping to see like the vendors come out with, or that you're interested in seeing you're thinking like a trend might happen in terms of maybe it's containers or maybe it's whatever.
Kind of all of the above, right? So I see big bets in our customers on the convergence of big 3-tier architectures getting software defined, right? We see a lot of software definition being deployed not only on the virtualization side, but now on the networking and the storage side. And if you asked me that a couple of years ago, would there be clients ripping out racks and racks of data center equipment with hyper-converged appliances? I would have said no. Right. We're seeing that almost become a reality.
Well, so let me ask you that, because like the joke I always used to have is when hyperconverged first came out. I've always been an HCI specialist. A lot of people know that. Even on the delivery side, I was. And it was always one of those things where no one had the intention of buying it, but they all wanted to see a quote for it, right, for
Absolutely,
a long time.
yeah.
And now...
Compare and contrast, right?
Yeah, and now...
Well, bring it full circle. The same thing with VMware. I mean, nobody wanted to run production on VMware for the first couple of years, and there was a bunch of us out there saying, "You're crazy not to do this. You actually
Why wouldn't you?
more availability,
Virtual Center,
right? Who cares? Microsoft's telling you, Exchange is not supported on it. You have more availability with it running on it than if you don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so along those lines, what do you think the biggest pushback was for that? Is it technology or is it cultural?
I think it's a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
Because in different
Cop out,
organizations,
but that's okay. I'm just kidding.
not such a cop out, but there were I call them server and storage huggers, right? So all these groups within an organization specialized on a specific pillar within their company. So when you told them that they were going to replace or merge their groups, there was a little bit of pushback because people could have been afraid of losing their jobs or learning a new skill set, or they could be close to retiring and not want to ride it out or learn something new. So I think those are some of the obstacles that I personally come across as far as resistance from adopting the technologies.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of both. I've seen people that literally don't trust it, and Fair. What's interesting to me, and this is the comment I always make, is there's several out there. I'm not picking for a particular reason, but VMware with vSAN and the attributed products with other partners, as well as Nutanix, have been some of the strongest partners in that space.
Absolutely,
right?
No doubt. And
both of those companies have a product on a particular public cloud, whether it's VMware on X or Nutanix on X, NC2 now. What I always say is, why would this company not only make a bet on selling it on premises, but why would they have an entire separate product line that they're pushing that's based on that same virtual software-defined storage, if it was not successful? Because that's what their go-to-market is on several different planes now of that same thing. Sure. It just wouldn't make logical sense if it wasn't stable, right? You even have the new vSAN 8 coming out, which is phenomenal. But for me, it's like you said, I'll cop out as well. It's also cultural. I had a company that we used to share in terms of that you handed off to me for a while, an insurance company. And, for them, it was cultural.
Absolutely.
It wasn't technological.
Yeah. This is my sand.
It's because, you came from, like you said, a lot of these large enterprises, they're so large that you are a specialist, you are a storage guy, you are a VMware person and
even a backup guy, right?
Yeah.
Or gal, right?
Yeah.
Protecting your kind of fiefdom in
Absolutely.
your land. And then there's other dynamics of where am I at in my career? Do I want to learn something new?
I've been here 30 years. I'm going to retire next year.
Well, and then there's also risk factors, right? This thing we've been doing for the last 20 years works just fine.
Absolutely.
Why change it? Yeah. Right? And it's kind of on us to show the compelling reasons to do that or not. Yeah,
it's definitely one of those interesting factors because it's our CEO and other people say change or die, right? And it's true. And you see a lot of people that were storage people that never wanted to learn VMware people that never wanted to, even CDI did it for a while. We didn't cross-train as much as we probably should for a while. Yeah. Now we do. Now there's you're incentivized to do
Absolutely.
So. But it's tough. I know when I first started here and I was on the delivery side, I wanted to, I did not want to wait for the networking person, but I wasn't allowed to touch the networking. I'm like, well,
you had the full capability.
I can do the top of rack switch. I might not be the best I'm not doing BGP, but at the same time, I can configure top of rack.
Chunks of VLAN.
Yeah, exactly. I'm done.
Bada bing, bada boom.
But, that's important. And I think that scares people, and people are way too comfortable sometimes, right? Yeah. But yeah, so I think we kind of wrap this up, right? And I definitely appreciate you, Joe, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great.
It's been definitely enjoyable. I will say cheers.
Cheers.
And
4.0.
4.0. All right.
Free sub.
And last thing is, feel free to write us in at essays and IPAs at cdillc.com for any comments, questions, other things you'd like us to add. Subjects you'd like us to cover, or even vendor essays you'd like to have us have on the podcast as well. But once again, thank you everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Essays and IPAs is a production of CDI Studios and is produced by Alyssa Hall and Spencer Grogan. To learn more about CDI, you can visit cdillc.com.